Good evening, my Trues Clues aficionados. I hope you all are doing well out there tonight, taking care of each other, watching out, saying something when you need to say something if you have to. Otherwise, taking good care of yourself. Chacha and I have been doing that. We went on a car camping trip just the other day. And now to get down to the second half of the story of the JonBenet Ramsey timeline. Crazy shit going. Okay, so the first part we covered, right up until Patsy passed away. And then after that, it seemed like the crazy train left the station. The ho 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 of Tomomo's train was rolling, and it was a rolling, and it was a rolling. Okay, so let's start from the beginning here. So the first suspect they wanted to light for the crime, as Joe Kenda would say, was, you know it, Patsy Ramsey. Yeah, they be loving them some Patsy. They just want some Patsy, to be the one to say what's going on there. And that she was the one that did it, mostly because of that letter, the one where the ransom note and the fact that the $118,000 was just such a bizarre amount. They just didn't know what to think about that. And then they figured that it was her handwriting because the handwriting analyst that came in and he said, yeah, it was a lady actually. Ping, 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 ping. These 19 places look like it was her talk, just writing up a storm in there. And then whoever did write the note obviously had all the fucking time. Supposedly they sat at the kitchen counter there with her legal pad, which belonged to Patsy, Patsy's pen, and wrote this damn note from the SCTB, association, and we're going to, and we need to, and blah, 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 blah. But anyway, horse shit on top of horse shit on top of horse shit. And so that's part of the reason that they, felt that she was, the one to be blamed for that. The second one was because that she had her daughter in pageantry. And rather than thinking she was living vicariously through her daughter and enjoying her daughter's pageant career, they decided no, she wanted to take revenge on her daughter for having that pageant career. The sprinkling of sugar on top of that, because she was a bedwetter. Now, a bedwetter can be a number of things, especially at that age, which is a little old for somebody to bedwet. But let's face it, children are different. Physiological changes can keep you from doing that. There is a, small little operation or something like that, especially with females, that can prevent that from happening. I don't know how deep they went into it, or maybe they had like, a natural type of doctor who was like, no, she'll grow out of it. We'll just leave it alone. The doctor said that there was no evidence of the child having been sexually, and the family stood by that. So, okay, she's up there. They're looking at her too. Next person in line, John. They did not like the way John acted at all, at all, at all when they were there doing the investigation. For one thing, he turned up missing for an hour and a half. And two, his state of agitatedness was concerning to them, I guess, because he wasn't feeling the profile of what a wounded father would look like. And then they busted him on the telephone trying to get his airplane to take him and the family over to Atlanta. Well, that part I can't really blame him for. Who the hell wants to stay in the house where your child just been killed? You don't even know. Is that person out there still? What's going on? I'm sure, but they didn't get caught, no breaks there. But, they should have said, hey, you don't have to stay here. You just can't leave to go somewhere else, okay? And then when they wanted to do the interviews with them, of course, we all know that they didn't want to interview unless they could interview together. They were going to pull, we're affluent card here or whatever you call it, they're entitled or whatever it was back then. Okay, fine. So that kept them in the line of suspicion. And then Burke, crazy ass Burke, when you look at the way he did his little just non-committal, non-emotional, and I know smart people, the smarter you are, sometimes the more non-emotional you are. Some people are just non-emotional, but it came off looking real freaky deaky, like he knew what happened. He didn't really want to talk about it. And that part I can understand. He was 9 years old. What do you want? A book from him? He said he didn't get out of the bed and go and look around because he was terrified of what happened. Well, hearing your mom shriek that early in the morning and then be screaming for the dad, I don't know. My first instinct is get up there and run and see what happened. But I'm always that type of person. I want to be out there, see what's up, be in the middle of everything, and move on like that. But Some people are not. Some people, it's that same flight or flight response. You're either going to, step to it or you're going to step back. Maybe he's a step backer. Okay, so then there was a dear elderly couple in the neighborhood. I can't remember the names to save my life, but anyway, around Christmas time, which we all know this was the day after Christmas when they called, they had a man that they had hired to come over to the house and play Santa Claus. And JonBenet and Burke were extremely taken with this gentleman. They even went around and JonBenet took him by hand and gave him an in-person tour of the home. Even in the basement, I assume by the wine cellar, anything to show him, what was going on. And as for his self, he totally, totally fell in love with JonBenet. I guess she just had that kind of personality, where you just fell in love with her. And I'm trying to find his name again. It was the Muck. Let me see here. Da, 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 da. His wife. Isn't it, they were Bill and Janet. And it was a Muck name. Anyway, Bill and Janet, they couldn't have been a nicer couple. They did look like a sweet little Santa Claus couple. They turned over blood samples. They gave hair samples, whatever it is they wanted. He remarked how dear JonBenet was to him when all of that happened, that they had, when they toured the house, she had given him a little bottle of gold glitter. Simply adored her. He said he felt closer to her than he felt to his children or even to his grandchildren, and that he wanted ashes to be spread with some of that glitter in with his ashes from her, because she just, made his day. And that's how close he felt to her. Now, that did raise some suspicions. I don't know how often they talked or how long, they've known each other, but apparently they live right there in the neighborhood, and everybody thought about them as Santa Claus. And at 6 years old, I would think you're fucking Santa Claus, and I'd be, yeah, let me show you this. Let me show you my room. Let me show you where the tree is. This is how you get in the house. So you need to leave some presents. I'd do the whole 9 yards. But they were cleared, and I don't believe that they had anything to do with it anyway. So then those people are on the train, but they're sitting way in the back. They're, be called crazy under some circumstances, maybe not. You play Santa Claus, you like kids, you're older people, maybe not. Okay, so then we're moving forward, and then all of a sudden on August 2006, crazy man teacher John Mark Carr said that he was the one who killed JonBenet, and he was arrested in Thailand. And he was a teacher, and I don't know, John Mark Carr, what you were doing in Thailand, because we know what happens in Thailand, and we know that abuse happens out there to very young people. Okay? So, no award-winning, accolades or medals for you. He did say that he had something involvement or, something to do with her. There was no DNA evidence to connect him with that. July 2008, District Attorney Mary Lacey released a statement that DNA recovered in the case had genetic profile belonging to a male, and it did not belong to anyone in the Ramsey family, releasing the Ramsey family from any review or of culpability in the death of JonBenet. Boulder's District Attorney's Office does not consider any member of the Ramsey family to be a suspect in the case. Which is fine and dandy. Fine and dandy if you want to say that. But it took you an awful damn long time to say that, and Patsy's dead. Really? She went to her grave thinking they were holding her a suspect in the murder of one of her children. Okay? Now, I'm not saying, but but she wasn't no Casey Anthony. I don't think she was. People held it against her that she was so emotionally distraught she had to be, sedated. I want to be sedated. Okay. So then, July to 2011, John Ramsey remarried, and he also wrote a book about the other side of suffering and recounts how his faith helped him navigate from suffering to forgiveness. October 23, 2013, a Colorado judge ordered the release of the 1993 grand jury indictment why do I want to say that? Grand jury indictment in the killing of JonBenet, possibly shedding light on why prosecutors decided against charging her parents and her death, according to the Associated Press. The papers were released in 1999, even though Alex Hunter prepared possible charges against John and Patsy Ramsey. 3 years after the daughter's murder, the indictment had remained sealed because Hunter decided not to pursue the charges, but officials never explained the decision. A lot of people feel that the decision to proceed forward to not press charges was because how affluent they were in the political arena that he was in. So they feel that he didn't feel comfortable enough and to pursue the charges and what happened. And they would have been going after the Ramseys. So maybe they were riding that. I'm not sure because it took them that long to clear them. But then they still said there was an internal person that had the external person's help. The internal person helped the external person to commit the crime. I mean, it can be as convoluted as can be. We can make up 102 theories, but until there's something more solid to go about, all basically right now is theories to work with. October 25, 2023, the 1999 grand jury indictment papers show released, according to CNN, the court documents show how the grand jury sought to charge JonBenet's parents with 2 identical counts. The grand jury alleged that John and Patsy did permit a child to be unreasonably placed in a situation which posed a great threat of injury to the child's life or health, which resulted in the death of JonBenet Ramsey. According to the documents published by CNN, the grand jury also alleged that each parent did render assistance to a person with intent to hinder, delay, and prevent the discovery, detention, apprehension, prosecution, conviction, and punishment of such person for the commission of a crime, knowing the person is being assisted with committed crime and was suspected of the crime of murder in the first degree and child abuse resulting in death. And the documents did not provide details on who that person could have been. But in essence, they were confirming what part of us thought and what part of us thought. That there was an outside intruder, but then that it was somebody in the house. And according to what the grand jury thought, they did want to pursue charges against the Ramsey parents because they thought something was up, that both of them had colluded some way in allowing their child to be injured, horribly abused and injured, and then murdered. July 22, 2016, another person jumping on to the crazy train. Gary Oliva, then 52-year-old, was arrested and accused of downloading child pornography after the Boulder Police Department received a cyber tip from the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children. A spokesman with the city of Boulder said they hadn't connected him to the Ramsey case. Police said he may have been close to the Ramsey house on the night of the murder. He was arrested on other charges back in 2000. Police found a photo of JonBenet in his possession. Oliva admitted to having an obsession with the beauty queen. Police said an investigation began into the possible connection. This man was completely obsessed with this little girl. That is just putting it mildly. Completely obsessed. Yes, indeed. He had actually had a little shrine of pictures of her with her little modeling outfits there. He had some Monopoly money that he had printed other pictures, cut her face out, pasted the pictures on the Monopoly money there. So he was a real freakazoid. Getting on the crazy train, asshole. And then I guess he also had been convicted of woman. And so they said he could have been there, but then they said the DNA released him. Okay, so the last guy I want to talk to you is the one that gives me heebie-jeebies, my spidey sense up to here. When I just look at his picture, it just, I don't know, I just feel like in my gut, but that's just my gut feeling. I don't have anything to support that. But the last gentleman I want to bring to your attention is a man by the name of Michael Helgoth. Valentine's Day, 1997. He had told his friend that he was going to be coming out, on the best side of making money. That he was up between him and a friend to make $50,000 to $60,000, and that money should be coming through pretty soon. He was involved in owning a junkyard with two of his other brothers. There were three brothers that owned a junkyard. And from what we know about killers and serial killers, this guy had it. He was just a real big asshole, and he was an animal abuser. He loved to shoot cats. He one time took a litter of kittens and was just twisting them, breaking their necks and killing them, and just tossing them to the side like it was nothing. When his friend heard about what happened to JonBenet, he definitely felt like there was something going on there. Besides that, he also had a history of sexual assault on a minor as well. So the guy did call and turn him in as a lead, but this Michael Helgoth ended up committing suicide before anything could become of it. And again, that just sets off my spidey sense as well. Why? Why? I can only hope that if he did do it, because I don't know, nobody knows at this point in time, but if he did do it and he took care of this mess because of his own guilt, then so be it, I guess. I'm not condemning him because I don't know, but if he was guilty, because when I see him, it just sets your hackles up. Maybe it's just because he's an animal abuser too, I don't know, but there you go. So, August 2016. Who Killed JonBenet is announced on air in a Lifetime movie to be released in September 1st back then. September 1, 2016, the chief of police in Boulder, Greg Testa, released a statement on JonBenet murder investigation saying that they were still working on it. The reason that they wanted to say that, because hell of a lot of documentaries and movies were coming out with all of these theories. And they just want people to know we are still working on that. Crazy Train's getting fuller all the time, but we haven't, come across any certain situation yet where we're going to go ahead and proceed with that yet. So then during all of this, stuff coming out and everything, they wanted people to know that they had looked at about 1,500 pieces of evidence, 200 DNA samples, investigated more than 20,000 tips, and interviewed more than 1,000 people. That's fine. When the real evidence was already messed up and gone, I don't know what you're going to say. So anyway, on September 5 of 2016, A&E did a special, and they interviewed John Ramsey, and he described how horrible it was, to live under the cloud of accusation of having one of your child not only being murdered, but you being accused of being the murderer. So he, was able to relay that information very well, and then how he depend on his, religion to get him through it, because Patsy was very devout Catholic as well. I don't know how much he was into it until after this, confronting the situation. And he definitely was still interested in trying to figure out who did it. It took the authorities 12 years to exonerate the Ramsey family. And there was just so much other information out there. This new information that came across, between there and the new information that was a little astounding to me, JonBenet's brother, Burke Ramsey, as he was older, he went on the Dr. Phil show. And he told Dr. Phil how horrific it was being at 9 years old, how scared he was, and how he wasn't going to get up out of the bed. That eventually he knew what happened because they told him what happened. He never really wanted to get into details to discuss it, which is understandable to an extent as well. But he said that he felt that the intruder came in because of JonBenet's modeling, and that somebody had been monitoring her maybe through that and came and took her away because of that. And so that's what he shared and revealed with Dr. Phil. So then after that, there was a show that came on, and it was CBS. And Dr. Henry Lee was on there, and then this forensic pathologist man, Mark Spitz, and then there was a number of people on there, and they started from the beginning. They covered all of the evidence that was there. Dr. Lee brought up some good points, but kind of, like, hey, there was trace evidence on the panties, but that was from the people who made the panties and put it in the package. It was female DNA, it wasn't male. Then I guess they pretty much came down to their assumption was that Burke had performed the evil deed. Totally pissed Burke off. At a certain point there, he went after them. He went after a lot of people that were accusing him of being involved in the homicide of his sister. And I think even John Ramsey came forward and followed a case there. They did eventually end up settling out of court because of what happened. So I'm not sure, of course, we're not going to find out, but eventually, because they were deemed innocent, even though it took 12 years, they were able to go back and get themselves redeemed. In the meantime, one of our local investigators here, her name is Paula Woodward. She had always been covering the case since it first started. And I used to like her. She was good. And she ended up writing a book about it, addressing the letter, because she thought the letter was really weird about how long it had been taken to write it. Who were these SBTCP people? I probably don't have the numbers or the letters right. And what the hell was all of that all about? I don't think she ever really came out and stated what she thought or who she thought had committed the crime. So, let's see here. JonBenet, and said the claim had already been investigated. Gary Oliva, who was arrested, but later killing JonBenet by accident. One else like JonBenet, and yet I let her slip. Her head bashed in half, and I watched her. It was an accident. Please, she was not like other kids. Well, that's a bunch of happy ass horse shit. And anyway, her head was an indentation, remember, like from a mag light that fitted perfectly in there. So I don't know what kind of crazy shit he's talking about. And so then JonBenet Ramsey is still trying to get this resolved. So he is signs up with the change.org, and it's a group that wants justice for JonBenet. Oh, wait a minute. JonBenet is doing his own thing with the Boulder police. And then this group gets together and they want it resolved too. They call themselves the JonBenet Ramsey Justice for JonBenet Ramsey group. Called on the police and the agency responsible for investigating the case, since it happened 25 years ago, to another investigating agency to look for new DNA technology. So they want it taken out of Boulder police and put it in somebody's hands they feel is more knowledgeable and has more up-to-date technology, so that they can run the evidence again and figure out what's going on here, and then hopefully eventually go after these people. So I'm not sure what happened to that, but they wanted it to be reviewed like the lady who did the chart on the Golden State Killer. It took her 6 or 8 months to go through and design that whole tree. I mean, it was a long, timely process, considering how long that whole scenario played out and how long this is playing out. It may be worth a shot. There was a person here that got busted for the same thing too. He had 2 girls that were hitchhiking in Breckenridge. That's exactly the same way they found him as well. So I do have big hopes on that. So I do have, I do see where this team is coming from in wanting that to get resolved. Also, John Ramsey is like 75 or more right now, even though he is remarried. He did write a book, how he got through everything, but he did reach out to the governor of Colorado, Jared Polis, asking him, to get funds together to do whatever it has to be done to get this case resolved. He's getting older. He's going to die soon, and he hasn't been able to find out who murdered his daughter. His wife died, never resolving the issues. She died under a dark cloud, thinking that she was a suspicious person in the murder. So, best of luck to him with that. I don't have big hopes because I don't have big hopes in the gentleman that he's addressing his needs to. So, oh my gosh, you guys. And this was horrific when it went down because my babies were in school. And it was scary. You know what I mean? I used to, at one point I would feel comfortable, letting the kids sleep in the backyard. I had a big husky. I'd leave the back door open. I'd be right there, like I'd hear everything. I didn't usually sleep outside with them though. And then after things like that happened, I wasn't going to do that anymore. I'd always hear that in the back of my mind. Keep your babies close. There's somebody bad out there. And I lived in the ghetto, so there was bad people everywhere. So I would really like to hear from you guys, who you think or how the scenario could have possibly worked out. What could have possibly happened to end this beautiful life, this shining light of this beautiful little girl. With that, love you guys. Take care of yourself. I'll see you on my next episode. Good night and take care.